I had the Scarn contact on my board for 6 hours before they had us on theirs, and that gap is the only reason any of us are alive to tell it. My name is Mira Castellan, and I ran sensors and comms on the TFS Aldermore, a diplomatic frigate built to look like nothing at all. That was the whole design philosophy. Round hull, soft thermal signature, weapons recessed so deep into the plating that even our own deck crew sometimes forgot they were there. Command called it the quiet mask. I called it the longest 6 hours of my life, watching a contact grow on my scope that I already knew would test it. We were 40 hours into Scarn Dominion space on the kind of mission nobody puts on a recruiting poster. A slow, deliberate, unarmed-looking crawl toward a system the Dominion claimed as a hunting preserve, carrying nothing but a treaty proposal and 3 escorts running so cold and quiet they barely registered as wakes in the dark. The idea was simple. Let them see exactly what they expected to see. A weak thing, a soft thing, the kind of thing that wanders into a hunting ground without understanding what a hunting ground is. I'd read the Dominion's threat assessments twice before launch. The Scarn don't do diplomacy first. They do appraisal first, a long, patient sizing up of anything that enters their territory, sorting it into exactly 2 categories, predator or prey. There's no third bin. Command's entire strategy rested on making sure we got sorted into the second one, and on being ready for the half a second after they realized they'd sorted wrong. The Scarn cruiser came off a debris field at the 11-hour mark, exactly the way the briefings said they would. Unhurried, confident, drifting on an intercept that wasn't trying to hide anything because it didn't think it needed to. I watched its profile resolve on my board, long, segmented, built more like a spine than a hull, running hot exhaust because heat discipline is a prey behavior, and the Scarn don't believe in being prey. Captain Okonkwo Reyes stood behind my station the whole time, hands clasped, watching the same returns I was. "They're not slowing," I said. "They're not supposed to," she said. "Hold the mask." That was the order, and I understood it, and I still felt every part of my training fighting it. Holding the mask meant doing nothing. It meant letting our weapons stay dark, our escorts stay cold, our hulls stay rounded and soft and stupid-looking, while a ship built for killing closed the distance like we were already caught. At 9 kilometers they signaled. Not words. A tone-burst Dominion ships use on confirmed prey. A kind of bureaucratic formality before the kill, like they were stamping a form. Comms flagged it red, and I read the translation off the corner of my display. Claim asserted. Vessel and cargo. No resistance anticipated. No resistance anticipated. I remember staring at those 3 words longer than I should have, given everything that happened in the next 90 seconds. The Scarn cruiser broke off its parallel track and turned in, weapons ports flaring open along its spine like a held breath finally let go. It wasn't subtle about it. It didn't need to be. In its threat calculus, the math was already finished. Soft hull, no visible armament, no maneuvering, an easy claim in a system full of easy claims. "Drop the mask," Okonkwo Reyes said, quiet as ever, like she was reading off a checklist instead of ending a 100-year-old assumption. I'd run the simulation 40 times in training, and it had never once looked the way it did for real. Our 3 escorts decloaked in the same half-second, not in front of the cruiser but around it, a triangle closing in space that had looked, until that instant, like nothing but stars. The Aldermore's hull plating split and folded back along seams that hadn't existed to outside sensors a moment before, and underneath it, the actual ship showed itself. Not soft, not round, not anything close to what their appraisal had filed us under. I had the Scarn cruiser's internal chatter on a passive intercept feed, garbled but readable, and what came through in the next 3 seconds wasn't a war cry, it was confusion. Then it was something closer to what I'd call, in a human, fear trying to find a procedure to attach itself to, and not finding one. Their gunnery officer, if that's even the right rank for what they have over there, kept repeating a single targeting query, over and over, like a man checking a number that refuses to change no matter how many times he runs it. I didn't need the full translation to understand the shape of it. He was asking his own ship to tell him that the soft, slow, defenseless thing on his screen 10 seconds ago hadn't just unfolded into 3 armed hulls and a 4th that outmassed his by a factor he clearly hadn't planned for. The ship kept giving him the same answer. He kept asking anyway. That's the part that stuck with me longest. Not the moment the mask came off, but the half-dozen seconds after, when a creature bred over 10,000 generations, to never be wrong about a kill, kept asking a question it already knew the answer to, because the answer broke something more fundamental than the math. They didn't fire. That's the part command will want in the report, the part I still turn over at night. A Skarn warship, fully armed, weapons hot, target acquired, did not fire. Because somewhere in that half-second, its targeting doctrine ran the new numbers, and came back with an answer its training had no slot for. Predator, not prey. And worse than predator, something that had let itself be misread on purpose, which meant every other soft thing they'd ever claimed in this region might have been the same kind of mistake. The cruiser killed its forward burn so hard, I watched its hull flex on sensor return. It didn't retreat in a panic. It backed off the way an animal backs off from a sound it doesn't recognize. Slow, deliberate, every system still listening, waiting to see if the new thing in front of it intended to finish what it had started. Okonkwo Reyes didn't gloat. I want that on the record too, because I've heard the stories from other first encounters. The speeches some captains apparently can't resist giving once the threat's been put down. She just opened a channel, voice level, and told them exactly what we'd told their government 3 systems ago, that the Aldermore carried a treaty proposal, that it had never once stopped carrying it, and that nothing about the last 90 seconds had to happen again if they didn't want it to. There was a long silence on that channel, long enough that I checked twice to make sure we hadn't lost the link. When the Skarn finally answered, it wasn't the prey claim tone burst, and it wasn't a war signal either. It was something I hadn't seen in any of their comm protocols on file. A query format, the kind their own diplomatic vessels use with each other when an assessment has failed and needs to be rebuilt from nothing. They didn't sign anything that day. I want to be honest about that, because I know how these stories get told afterward, all clean arcs and tidy endings. What happened was smaller and, I think, more honest than a treaty signed on the spot. The Skarn cruiser held position at a respectful distance and simply watched us for 6 more hours, running every sensor sweep it had, recalculating something it had built its entire culture around, getting right on the first look. Then it withdrew, formally, on a course that gave us the whole system without contest, and it sent one more signal before it went dark. Not a claim, not a threat, but a single Dominion glyph that our linguists later translated, after some argument, as something close to noted. I don't know what the Skarn do with a category they don't have a name for yet. I don't think they know either. But I watched a species that sorts the universe into hunters, and hunted sit there for 6 hours trying to figure out which one we were, and come away with neither answer, and leave anyway, because for the first time in their long patient history of appraisal, they weren't sure enough to act on the one they'd started with. We held the mask up again 20 minutes later, out of habit more than need, hull folding closed over weapons that didn't need to be seen anymore to be remembered. I sat at my station a long while after that, watching the empty space where the cruiser had been, and thought about how much of what we are, out here, is a choice about what we let people see first, and how the real first contact isn't the moment they see you. It's the moment after, when they have to decide what to do with what they saw. Nobody on the Aldermore talked much on the way home. Okonkwo Reyes logged it as a successful contact. No casualties, no escalation, treaty status pending. I logged it differently in my own head, the way I think everyone on that bridge did. We hadn't won a fight. We'd ended one before the Skarn even knew it had started, by being patient enough to look weak for exactly as long as it took them to prove they couldn't tell the difference.